What if I told you that most people fighting debt are only using half of the remedy? Now, consumer law protects you, but it doesn't get you paid. The truth is, consumer law is the shield and the UCC, that is the sword. That is the weapon that you will use against the debt collectors. That is the weapon that you will use against the loan companies, the credit card companies, whatever the case may be. And in this video, I'm going to show you how the system is designed to defend the FDCPA and enforce the UCC and why you need to know both. Now, before we dive into this video, I've studied consumer law, commercial regulations, and also how to be able to challenge debt collectors. And I'm here to show you exactly how it is done. Now, this is not legal advice. This is not financial advice. Make sure to do your due diligence. Tap into the information even after you see this video. You dig what I'm saying? Also, at the same time, if you're brand new, remember to hit the like button. Remember to hit the subscribe button. We want to make sure we're at the top of the algorithm, and most people are able to see this information that nobody is talking about. People are afraid to break down this information. Why? I do not know. All right. People want to make it a mystique around it. You're confused whether I should be using the Fair Credit Reporting Act, the FDCPA, whatever the case may be, or should I be using the UCC? See, the thing is, you use both of them. Okay. Strategically. All right. And this is why it's important for you to understand the law. All right. Again, this is not legal advice. This is not financial advice, tax advice. This is none of that. All my rights are reserved according to UCC 1-308. All right. Now, what we're going to be talking about in this video is the role that consumer law plays, being the shield. We're going to be talking about how the UCC is the sword and what you can assert under the UCC. And we're going to talk about how to use them strategically. So make sure you stay all the way to the end so that you can be able to get this game. Now, let's dive straight in. Okay. The first thing I want to get to and the first thing I want to emphasize is when it comes to debts, the first thing that you have to understand is that when we're talking about consumer law is what is protecting you. You dig what I'm saying? Consumer law is the shield. It's more of what is allowing you to keep your rights. Okay. So, for example, you have the FDCPA, you have the Fair Credit Reporting Act, you have the Truth in Lending Act, and these are the main foundations of consumer law because this is what's going to protect you in the aspect of unfair debt collectors, okay? Under the FDCPA, under the Fair Credit Reporting Act, it's going to protect you and your credit data. And then under the Truth in Lending Act, it's going to break down the disclosures that are entitled to you when it comes to lending. It's going to give you the truth in lending. So when you're thinking of consumer law, think of these three codes, okay? 15 USC, talking about debt collection practices, talking about the credit reporting agencies, and then general provisions as it pertains to the lending, all right? So let's start with the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. Since we're going to be dealing with debts, one of the key things that you have to understand and what this shields you from is when debt collectors do things like harass you, do things that are unfair, do things that put you in a position to where you make myself bigger, put yourself in a position to where they are taking advantage of you. Okay. Whether they're not communicating in a lawful manner, whether they are doing things like calling you at obscure times, abusing your phone number, giving you false and misleading information, doing anything that is considered unfair, not equitable. This is when you dive into the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. And this is something that Congress put together because they noticed that debt collectors will be abusive. They noticed that they think that they are above the law. They noticed that, so they made sure to pretty much put together this Fair Debt Collection Practices Act to protect you against things that they will do. It doesn't mean that they won't do it. Just because you see it here doesn't mean that they won't do it. Okay? So it's not that you'll be enforcing, well, the law says that you can't do this. It's not about that. It's about, hey, look, these are my rights, and you cannot do things like harass me, give me false and misleading information. You can't do that. Okay? And it's up to you to enforce it. They won't necessarily do it. You have to make sure you put up that shield by knowing exactly how the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act goes with the debt discharge, the debt collection process. Okay, so this is the first thing that you want to understand when it comes to challenging debt collectors, is understanding the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, because these are some of the things that you can use against them. Okay, we can look at acquisition of location information. A debt collector gets your information by what? From the original company you signed with. They shouldn't be giving out your information. Or how about them ignoring you and not communicating properly? That's a violation of 15 U.S.C. 92C, 1692C. We look at harassment and abuse, repeatedly calling your phone, okay? Threatening you, all right? And then also the aspect of you being able to validate debt. I don't care what type of debt it is. Under the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, you can validate debt. So the whole thing is to essentially put you in a position to stop debt collectors from the bullshit they'll do to you. Then we dive into the Fair Credit Reporting Act, which is what truly messes one up, okay? People will look at, oh, let me attack the debt. Let me attack these charge-offs or whatever the case may be. But the reality is how it's truly affecting you is how it's affecting your credit report, okay? Because if your credit report is bad, then you are unable to apply for things. You're unable to get the things that will help you to build wealth. You know what I mean? Able to access those assets or be able to get money to exchange and build up more assets to get other people's money. You dig what I'm saying? So the true harm that happens is sitting there getting denied for things. And why do you get denied? Because of the things that's on your credit report. So you can have everything sorted out on the debt side, but it can still show up on your credit report. This is why it's important to make sure you understand how to also challenge the credit reporting agencies, and you challenging them based on how they are violating you and how they are doing unjust things, how they are reporting inaccurate and unverifiable information, how they are harming you by having inaccurate or non-proven information on your credit report that can affect you and makes them money. Okay, they're benefiting off of your adversity, and that right there is not considered fair credit reporting. This is why they created the Fair Credit Reporting Act, so that you are in position to stop the unfair credit reporting. Okay, this is why most things on your credit report can be challenged. This is why something can seemingly be accurate, but if they're unable to prove it, then it is not supposed to be on your credit report. A lot of people, they look at this and they dive into identity theft. Oh yeah, permissible purpose or whatever the case may be. But the reality is that understanding the fundamentals of the Fair Credit Reporting Act, understanding that there are disclosures when they investigate your consumer reports that you should be getting. There are compliance procedures that they must follow. There are disclosures that you should be getting when you are challenging inaccurate information. It talks about the procedures in case of a disputed accuracy, meaning they're supposed to provide verifiable proof of a disputed accuracy. Okay, certain things breaking down the responsibility of furnishers of your information to consumer reporting agencies, right? Civil liability for willful noncompliance, civil liability for negligent noncompliance. Essentially, if you say, hey, something is inaccurate on my credit report, and they put it on your credit report without your consent or without verifying it, then this will be considered willful or negligent noncompliance. And both of them, civil liability is they will be fined for dishonoring that. Okay, these are some of the things that you should know. You should even dive into even the purpose of this subchapter is the fact that the banking system is dependent upon fair and accurate credit reporting, meaning they need credit bureaus or accurate credit reporting so that they can be able to make money. Okay, but the reality is that it's not the credit reporting, it's the public that they need. But if the public starts to lose trust in them because of the inaccurate credit reporting, this can undermine the public confidence, which is essential to the continued functioning of the banking system. When you look at modern money mechanics, when you look at fractional banking, when you look at the Federal Reserve System, the only way that banks are able to make money is if we participate in commerce, if we apply for loans, if we apply for credit cards. But see, if we can't, or we're feeling like we're constantly being denied, denial is also considered harm in the eyes of the court. Then we won't do any applications. They won't be able to get our promissory notes and essentially be able to exchange it with the Federal Reserve and get that extra money. They won't be able to do that if we don't have trust in them. Okay? So that's the Fair Credit Reporting Act. This is why we'll say get well versed in the FDCPA and the Fair Credit Reporting Act, because this is what's going to protect your data, and this is going to protect you against harassment from debt collectors. Now, here's the other aspect that's going to protect you from these lending contracts that they will coerce you into, that they would induce you with fraud, that they would put you in a position where you don't even know all the disclosures to the lending process. When I talk about modern money mechanics, when I talk about fractional reserve banking, when I talk about communicating with a debt collector, they have a responsibility and they are regulated by the Truth in Lending Act. If you lent me money, then you have to be able to disclose how you lent the money. You got to be able to have a valid contract according to lending. But the thing is, they won't. And this is what the Truth in Lending Act protects you from. It is literally the truth in lending. Okay? So there are some disclosures that you are entitled to. You understand me? So now, when we go to the Truth in Lending Act, they have things like, it's essentially saying that under the congressional findings that the Congress finds that economic stabilization will be enhanced and the competition among various financial institutions and other firms engaged in the extension of consumer credit will be strengthened by the informed use of credit. The informed use of credit results from an awareness of cost thereof by consumers, and it is the purpose of this subchapter to assure a meaningful disclosure of credit terms so that the consumer be able to compare more readily the various credit terms available to him and avoid the uninformed use of credit, and to protect the consumer against inaccurate and unfair credit billing and credit card practices. So they've been finessing, okay? And I say all this to say, or the reason why they put this together is because they understand that they're going to take advantage of the consumer. They understand that they're going to do things like misdisclosures and stuff so that we don't know the truth in lending. But this is why they put this together. All right. A good read is the definitions and rules of construction. It's going to break down the definition of creditor. It's going to break down who a creditor actually is. And this is why they don't give you the disclosures, because it'll say that the credit means the right granted by a creditor. A creditor refers to only a person. When you click the button person, it says a person means a natural person or an organization. See, I get so confident with this because I'm literally reading and studying this minimum 1 hour a day. See, I'm not just talking about this stuff so that one could not look this up. I mean, I talk about it so that one could be confident in the process and know exactly what these regulations are here for. Okay, some people will go in there and they'll just use 15 USC 1602 or what they seen on 15 USC 1681 and wonder why they're not getting full remedy and full results. Okay, you're just kind of telling them what you're protected against. Okay, so on the consumer law aspect, it's going to do things like stop debt collectors from harassing you. It's going to do things like let you dispute inaccurate, unverifiable information. It's going to do things like give you rights to be able to sue for violations. It is your defense. And essentially, it's up to you to be able to hold the line and stop the abuse. This is literally asserting and letting you know exactly what your rights are when it comes to consumer credit transactions, when it comes to debt, when it comes to credit reporting, things that actually affects you that you need a shield from, okay? But here's the problem. You can sue and get some damages, but you're still reacting because consumer law only slows the bleeding. It doesn't really reclaim the wealth, okay? It doesn't really reclaim your power, all right? It only just protects you from their negative power. But there's one thing about having a shield. It's only so much beating that you can take. This is why understanding that these regulations are just put in place to shield you, but it's not put in place to go for the kill. So this is why we talk about the UCC. The UCC is a sword, all right? So when we go to things like E3-603, which is the tender of payment, essentially discharges an obligation when they refuse it. It says it right here. When a tender is refused, there's discharge. This is little known code and quote that you will put in your notice of tender letter that essentially says that, hey, look, if you refuse this, then there is discharge. That's you already digging a knife in. Okay, you already are making your slash and saying, hey, look, boom, I'm gonna block you. But if you try to refuse me, I'm coming back with an attack. If you keep going, I'm gonna hit you with one of these. You dig what I'm saying? And that right there is the tender payment. The tender payment is literally the trap that you set up with your shield, where they're going to try to make things and say, oh, we refuse, or whatever the case may be. Boom, boom. Now I'm back on top. Okay. Then we go to 9-210, where you can start to request for information, request for accounting, request regarding a list of collateral, request for the statement of account, because you can start asking for things like how they did the accounting, those book entry, whatever they entered in the bookkeeping, right? How they have gotten paid, where the money has gone. 9-210 allows you to ask for that. Okay. This is not a defense tactic. This is literally you initiating it, okay, and enforcing. Then we go to UCC 3-501, which pretty much states that a presentment means a demand made by or on behalf of a person entitled to enforce the instrument and to pay an instrument made to the drawer or party obliged to pay the instrument, or in the case of a note or accepted draft payable at a bank, to the bank, and to accept the draft made to the drawer. It says that a presentment means a demand. Okay, so you are now demanding, and with your demand, it requires a performance. When you make a presentment, they must perform, and if they don't perform, then they are dishonoring. Dishonoring is a violation. You dig me? We can go to things like you see 3-. 3-305, which gives you the ability to defend and defend yourself against claims that you've either signed or created under duress, lack of legal capacity, illegality of the transaction, right? Fraud that induced the obligor to assign an instrument. So if they persuaded you or done anything that you believe to whether you was under duress, you didn't have full legal capacity, or whatever the case may be, this gives you the ability to challenge and defend yourself against it. So it really goes hand in hand with the consumer law, because once you're able to pull these things up, and it's not really like you have to explain this to them, it's already there. You just have to understand it so that when you are going about these things and you are going for your slashes and not just shielding yourself, you know that you are well within your right of doing these things. Now, I can go through this entire UCC, but understand that the not the FDCPA, but there's one side of consumer law, okay? And that's the aspect of the Fair Credit Reporting Act, Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, and also at the same time, the Truth in Lending Act that's going to shield you. But then there's the UCC. The UCC is going to have regulations put in place so that you can be able to exercise your rights and assert your rights, okay? So what the UCC allows you to do is going to allow you to enforce your commercial obligations. It's going to allow you to demand accounting. It's going to allow you to establish your position as creditor because of all the regulations and definitions in the UCC, because of the Truth in Lending Act. It's going to allow you to claim your right to set off or tender a negotiable instrument. All the information about negotiable instruments, discharging debt, is all under the UCC. You can go to UCC 3-604. It's literally going to talk about discharge by cancellation. It's going to have the definition of discharge in there. Okay. So understand that consumer law defends you as a person, and the UCC powers you as a commercial actor. Okay. So now you can act more on the commercial side and the business side because you are using the UCC. Okay. Consumer law is on the public protection side, and the UCC is on the private enforcement side. Okay. So if you're going to do these things administratively and do it privately, you got to use both the FDCPA, the Fair Credit Reporting Act, the Truth in Lending Act, and things like the UCC in order to challenge them strategically. So this is how you're going to use them both strategically. You start with consumer law to build leverage, okay? You would do things like dispute your accounts using the Fair Credit Reporting Act. You're going to do things like request validation using the FDCPA, the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. You're going to do things like file the complaints with those regulatory agencies, okay? You're going to gather their violations, meaning if they dishonored you when you try to dispute your account, and they don't do it, that's a direct violation of the Fair Credit Reporting Act. If they don't give you the accounting or you request for validation and they don't give it to you, that is a direct violation of 15 U.S.C. 1692G, which is under the Fair Credit Reporting Act. When you file the complaints, you bring up these violations, right? They're constant ignoring. You bring up these violations, you gather up those counts, and those accounts, according to consumer law, they can be assessed up to $1,000. They can even be criminally liable for certain things under the Truth in Lending Act. Okay. Then you will shift to the UCC so that you can get the remedy, right? You use the UCC to tender your payment and enforce your payment. Okay. You use the UCC to understand when to send a notice of dishonor. When you have presented them a presentment and they do not respond, or whatever the case may be, this is something that you use UCC 3-501 and UCC 3-505 to understand how to be able to reply back when they dishonor you and essentially go for your own dig or slash, how to create your own commercial record, okay? Requesting accounting and things of that nature, being able to defend yourself, okay? And then to do things like file a lien or do a UCC-1 to be able to establish that you have security interest in whatever the collateral is. Enforcing those people who have real security interests to step up. You dig what I'm saying? See, most people don't get results because they stay stuck playing defense. And they don't step into their authority on the private side. They don't use the UCC. They may just use the USC, but they don't use the UCC. Or they may think that I'm just going to go about the UCC, but they don't gather up those violations, or they don't know how they are violated under the USC. You get what I'm saying? So they both go hand in hand. You have to use both of them. But the biggest thing that we step away from is knowing exactly what it is that each role that the consumer law and the UCC plays, and being strategic in a way that we can win, being strategic enough to where we back them in the corner, being strategic enough to where we are the ones kind of setting the playing field. We just wait on them. And I don't want you to wait on them anymore. I want you to take action. I want you to use both to set the trap and go for the kill. Okay? In GTA. You dig what I'm saying? So if you only know the shield, then you'll keep blocking punches. But if you have a sword with your shield, then you're going to be able to play defense and offense. And I want you to play offense. Okay, you want to be able to enforce, reclaim your power, and also build wealth in the private, whether it's stopping these unlawful debt collectors, whether it's stopping a company that is violating your rights, and now taking action to where you can get remedy, you can get recoupment, you can get paid for challenging them in their dishonor. All right. So that's how the system works. It's commerce. It's business at the end of the day. So there's no moral or immoral way. Obviously, you want things to be fair, right? But discharging your debt, challenging a debt collector is only business. It's not immoral. Okay. And they know this. They do it to you too. So thank you guys for watching this video. Wanted to do a quick video really breaking down the difference and how to use these strategically, going along with the information that you are learning about debt discharge, having to break down the laws and know the difference between the USC and the UCC. If you've gotten this far, down below, if you want to learn more about this, I have the complete debt guide. I have templates, letters, conditional acceptance, affidavit of truths, declaration of the truth, templates, abstract truth, HIPAA challenge, whatever the case may be. All the letters are in the complete debt guide. Tap in. You dig what I'm saying? Number two, if you want to know how to fully implement all of this, it's in the complete debt guide. All right. Number three, if you need help with fixing your credit, getting funding, or starting a business, tap into that one-on-one mentorship link. You put in the application and you learn how to work with me one-on-one. But if it is about anything in regards to consumer law or UCC, and it's not specific about credit or whatever the case may be, just get the complete deck guide. All right. Number 3, tap into my Instagram at biz.nick. Tap into my Twitch at biz_nick. Tap into the Discord. The link is in the description. Down below, you can get your credit report for $1 through Smart Credit. Go ahead and tap into that. And also at the same time, if you've gotten all the way this far, remember to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and comment the word discharge if you got all the way to the end. I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.